All right, today we're diving into a scenario that feels like it's been ripped straight from a political thriller, but it's actually grounded in some pretty serious strategic analysis. We're going to break down a hypothetical intelligence report on what might happen if Iran's supreme leader was suddenly killed in a military strike. So let's get into it.
So, let's set the scene. The date is February 28, 2026. According to this report, this isn't just another day on the calendar. Nope. This is the day a long simmering conflict absolutely explodes into an open firestorm, one that threatens to completely redraw the map of the Middle East.
So, what's the spark? What lights the fuse? Well, it all starts with the first domino to fall, a massive, coordinated military campaign with a pretty dramatic code name, Operation Epic Fury.
And what's really wild here is just how fast this all goes down. I mean, look at this timeline. On February 26th, you've got diplomats in a room, talking. But then, bam, the talks completely fall apart. Less than 48 hours later, an ultimatum is on the table, and then warplanes are in the sky over Iran. Diplomacy failed, and the military option became a reality, like overnight.
Okay, and this brings us to a really critical point. This was not your typical military strike, just trying to damage some infrastructure. Oh no, the goal here was way bigger, way more radical. This was a decapitation strike. The plan? To cut the head off the snake, to take out Iran's entire leadership in one single devastating blow. And the bullseye, the number one target, was Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And they got him. The 86-year-old supreme leader, the man who had held absolute power for over 3 decades, was gone. Just like that. The very anchor of the entire system was simply eliminated.
But here's the thing, it wasn't just Khamenei. As you can see from this list, the strike also took out the IRGC's ground forces commander, the defense minister, the head of the defense council, gone. It's like removing the CEO, the COO, and the entire board of directors of a massive corporation all at the same time. The entire brain trust of Iran's security apparatus was just erased in a matter of hours. But here's the million-dollar question, right? You can kill the leader, but does that actually kill the regime? So how in the world does a headless state even begin to survive?
With the entire leadership wiped out, Iran is immediately plunged into a massive power vacuum. So what happens next, inside a country that's now at war and in a state of total institutional collapse?
Well, to get how the regime doesn't just instantly crumble, you have to understand something called the bait. Think of it like a hidden operating system running in the background of the state. It's a deep state network of about 4,000 hyper-loyal agents planted everywhere, in every ministry, every office. This whole structure was basically designed for this exact doomsday scenario, to keep the machine running even if the guy at the top is gone.
Meanwhile, down on the streets, the country is literally split in two. In some apartments in Tehran, you've got people secretly cheering, maybe even playing music, celebrating the end of a dictator. But elsewhere, it's sheer panic. The highways are choked with cars trying to flee. Gas stations and supermarkets are being mobbed. It's this bizarre contrast of hope and absolute terror happening side by side.
Officially, there's a constitutional plan for this. A 3-person council is supposed to take over. But here's the catch. This isn't a team of allies. It's a council of rivals. You've got a reformist president, a hardline head of the judiciary, and a cleric stuck right in the middle. They're trying to steer the ship through a hurricane, which is basically a recipe for internal conflict, right when unity is needed most.
So, what's the most likely outcome of all this chaos? Well, analysts predict the rise of what they're calling IRGC-Stan. Essentially, the Revolutionary Guard Corps steps in and just takes over everything. The pretense of a theocracy is over. It becomes a straight-up military dictatorship, and you can bet it's going to be even more paranoid and more aggressive than before. So while Tehran is busy imploding, its allies across the region are gearing up for revenge. And this is where we see that the war, well, it's really only just begun.
Right. The shock waves from Tehran don't stop at Iran's borders. They immediately trigger a violent, coordinated response from Iran's network of allies across the region, what they call the axis of resistance. We're talking about powerful groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis down in Yemen.
And even with its leadership in shambles, don't think for a second that Iran is toothless. In the hours right after the attack, it unleashes a crazy barrage. Over 300 ballistic missiles and drones fired at targets all across the Middle East. It's a shocking way to send a message: we're still here, and we can still fight back.
And that retaliation hits hard. For the very first time, a heavy ballistic missile gets through Israel's defenses and slams right into a residential neighborhood in Tel Aviv. An entire city block is just gone. This brings the war directly to the civilian heart of Israel's financial center.
And at the same time, Iran's proxies are all activated. Hezbollah had warned that killing Khamenei was a red line. Well, that line just got crossed, and they open up a whole new war on Israel's northern border. In Yemen, the Houthis call for mass mobilization. In Iraq, militias tell their fighters to get ready for a long war against Western forces. The conflict just went from one country to the entire region.
A regional war involving a major oil producer, you know what that means. It instantly sends shockwaves across the entire globe, putting the world economy and international diplomacy on an absolute knife's edge.
The global reaction is immediate, and it splits the world right down familiar geopolitical fault lines. The U.S. and its closest allies support the operation. Major European powers are nervous, calling for everyone to calm down. And Russia and China? They issue an absolute condemnation of what they call unprovoked aggression. The UN is left calling for emergency meetings as the world divides.
The economic fallout is instantaneous and brutal. Dubai's airport, the busiest international hub in the world, just shuts down, grinding global travel to a halt. The Tehran Stock Exchange closes. But the biggest fear, the one that grips the energy markets, is the potential closure of the Strait of Hormuz, a critical choke point for the world's oil. Analysts are already predicting a massive inflationary shock is on the way.
So we're left with this final, really chilling question. The operation was a tactical success. It eliminated its targets. But by shattering the old regime, did it unleash something far worse? A cornered, purely militaristic state, hell-bent on survival, and now with the ultimate motivation to acquire a nuclear weapon. That's the strategic paradox at the heart of this entire crisis.